I'm going to turn it over to Abel then as we get going.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dan. So we are going to start with a great session that we have today using OAC for marketing analytics. This is a presentation that Dan from Vlamis Software is going to do, and Ray Owens from Amsive. I'm going to let both of them introduce a little. But before that, please, you can submit your questions at any time during the session. The session will be like 40 minutes. Dan and Ray are going to answer your questions at the end of the session, but please submit your question at the Q&A box instead of the chat box, and we're going to take care of that at the end of Ray and Dan's session. Okay, thank you, Ray. Dan, the audience is all yours.
Thank you, Edo. Appreciate it. Ray, if you want to share your screen, we can get started and talk about using OAC marketing analytics. I'll go ahead and Ray is the EVP of Data and Analytics for Amsive. Ray, go ahead.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Good to see you. For those, I have quite a few colleagues in this group, and you might know our company as DX Marketing, a longtime customer of the Oracle, but recently acquired by Amsive, which we'll talk about a little bit. But really, as a marketing services agency, we use a lot of data in driving not only marketing campaigns through different channels, but also advanced analytics to help our clients understand what's going on in growing their business, customer flow, and everything with measurement across the marketing spectrum. So we are, as a company, we're kind of all over the US here, mostly in the East Coast, recently California and the Midwest a bit too, but 700 plus employees, quite a few number of clients, and actually privately owned by a private equity company. So we'll show you the ways that we're using analytics, specifically through Oracle, to drive growth for clients in a variety of different business verticals. Dan?
So a little bit about Vlamis and where we fit in all of this. Vlamis, we were founded over 25 years ago. We develop all sorts of Oracle BI and analytics systems, and we specialize really in this space of enterprise business intelligence and analytics, something we call analytic warehousing, using a data warehouse for analytic purposes, as well as machine learning, predictive analytics, and data visualization. Indeed, my brother Tim and I are the authors of the book on data visualization for Oracle Business Intelligence. So we have all sorts of stuff about our company on Vlamis.com, so check that out.
Great. So our journey with Oracle actually began a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, in fact. As we were DX marketing, we actually, I think we were one of the first production environments in the Oracle database. So we built a data warehouse in OCI. It migrated to bare metal. We've been moving into ADW since then. But really what the whole construct for using analytics in the data warehouse was to house a lot of US consumer data, because we have special licensing to help our clients with profiling and what's going on with all kinds of consumer data. The client data themselves, you know, we get a lot of workflow from the various clients in the various verticals. Building predictive models so that we can help them grow their business, help them cross-sell, upsell. But also there's a lot of campaign data going on, because we do address a lot of different marketing channels. So there's a lot of campaign data, responder data that's flowing back as well. So this environment was something that we built at DX Marketing, and working with the Vlamis Group over the years, have sort of created this analytics environment that caught the eye of Amsive and the private equity group. And so the whole objective here with Amsive, because it's a larger company, was to actually supersize what we were doing with DX Marketing. And that is to build out a marketing intelligence platform on a larger scale and a more enterprise level approach. So while we had dozens of clients at DX, Amsive were ingesting hundreds of different client data sets, and these range from small, medium business space to enterprise level. Lots of data points that come in from offline and online consumer sources. Dan will talk a little bit about our ask of building that analytics environment. Again, because we have so many different clients and so many different business verticals we work in, it creates a need for lots of micro projects, what we call, just from a marketing perspective. But our biggest goal, and you'll see this in some of the examples we'll show, is getting more automation or semi-automation into the process itself and visualization from these marketing initiatives. We've done a good job of sort of piecing together different tools over the years through Oracle, through other external data partners, like for visualization, for some analytics things with SaaS. But we're doing a consolidation now that Dan will talk about. We actually, as we came into the Amsive team, we started a proof of concept in just earlier this year in Q1, where we actually spun up an instance of ADW, layered in the advanced analytics through OML, and did some really neat work just to test some of the data flow that was coming in and out of the company. So we're actually already moving into production. We actually went live last week. Using Vlamis with the lift services, also Oracle, we have probably about a 6 to 8 month build out as we get this platform off the ground. So Dan, I want to turn this over to you, because this was our ask of Oracle and Vlamis in terms of what we were trying to construct from a data warehouse perspective, but also analytics as well.
So when Ray and his group approached us, what they wanted to do was find something that simplifies this entire data movement process. I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about what we're working on trying to satisfy that. As Amsive takes in various clients, they bring in this whole issue of being able to ingest the data, manage the data, gain insights from it, run some predictive models, and then report and visualize that data. And so the challenge we had was, how do they do that with the platform? And Ray, correct me if I'm wrong, but the challenge is they were using multiple tools to do this in different ways, and really wanted more of a standardized way of handling this entire workflow. Sound right in terms of what you're running into?
It is. DX Marketing, we were actually using the cloud environment for the data warehouse. This was an on-prem system, so we're doing a lift and shift, as well as layering in the analytics itself.
Yeah, so what they wanted to be able to do was, starting then on the data ingestion part, look at QAing that data and how do they control the data on that. How do they, even something as basic as ensuring that all of the files are there as they come in. Are we missing something? Was that file updated? And this is where we plan to use features in OCI to control that entire process. Looking for errors, notifying problems if there's a problem in that. How do you distribute that information around? And then how do you do that with an API-based system and be able to handle that data as it comes in? And one of the challenges in this platform is that those files are not necessarily always in a standardized format. Each customer has their own way of tracking those marketing data, and how do they end up giving that data to Amsive? And that's where Amsive supplies, in effect, the method for keeping track of all of that for all of its clients and standardize that type of thing. As well, then when you're bringing the data in, how do you then stitch the data together and standardize it and handle various entities that all come together, pulling that all together. Then as you move through this process of bringing all the, and this is where, by the way, we plan to use and are starting to use already the autonomous data warehouse to achieve some of that with some of the ADW tools that have come out of that on that platform really in the past year or so. Indeed, in AMDOUC, there's been presentations on specifically those new tools for taking care of that data as it comes in, incorporating really some of the features of Oracle Data Integrator, ODI. Then as we bring that in, we are putting that into a common master model that then standardizes all of that type of data, even though it comes back from different sources, they care about different attributes, putting it in a model that standardizes all of that so that we can have similar workflow across multiple clients for that. Looking at what journey the customers are taking on that. How do we do customer profiling? Ray, it may come up later, but if you could describe a little bit what they're doing with the customer profiling on this as well, what clients are asking for. I think it's appropriate here.
Sure. I mean, like in any situation when you're trying to grow a business or require more customers, there's a lot of work that we do in creating lookalike models. So we'll score U.S. population for the different clients, their different business verticals, because what they're really trying to do is find, not only determine market share of who's actually using their product or service, but also building predictive models that can actually help drive new acquisition, and then using the different channels that come from us as a marketing services company. So if it's folks who prefer their content online, folks that prefer analog, email, maybe it's over the top or Internet of Things. So just to fit the appropriate channel with the appropriate audience. And we're doing this and replicating this, as I mentioned, hundreds and hundreds of times, just because of the client volume and the different verticals we work with. So we needed something, as Dan was describing, that has more automation to it, that obviously can ingest and actually help with the modeling, but also push into the actual marketing channels themselves.
And then we'll be using the predictive capabilities of both. The ADW platform has its own machine learning capabilities and building those models in there, as well as some of the features in the Oracle Analytics platform to do some of the scoring that Ray's talking about. And then ultimately, of course, visualizing that data using some of the visualizations in Oracle Analytics, and then be able to supply that as well throughout their entire ecosystem. So then we looked at how to flow that data back and forth, and how do we then architect all of that for Amsive. Go ahead and advance the next slide, Ray.
Yep.
And how do we pull this all together is based on the an Oracle refinery type of process, where we're taking the bulk data wherever it comes from and then load that into a persistence platform. Focused, really, the heart of that is in the autonomous data warehouse, and then processing the models using a standard ADW schema. Will likely end up with, in some cases, a different ADW instance indeed for each client, so that they are segmented from other autonomous data warehouses. But we are standardizing all of those schemas so that we can use the same code across multiple of these instances. We'll then be loading that data into the object storage. In here, indeed, that process has already started, loading the data from the first of the customers into the object storage. Then we'll have some data integration that brings that into ultimately the ADW, and then visualize that on a Oracle Analytics Cloud instance, and using a combination of the stuff that we're building in the autonomous data warehouse, some of the machine learning capabilities, and as well as OAC on using all of that. So all of that then can be consumed by various applications and various front ends, including obviously the biggest front end would be OAC. Right back to you.
Sure. There's a question in the chat about why aren't we using PDBs to separate customers?
So I'll go ahead and handle that. We may end up using PDBs, but in effect, by using Autonomous Data Warehouse, it is a separate instance. PDBs, in effect, that is the underpinnings of ADW. So we'll be using ADW will have different instances for each customer. I don't believe you can have a PDB, multiple PDBs within a specific ADW instance. As Oracle adds that, we'll be looking to do that as well, as that becomes a feature of the ADW platform.
Great. So we thought we'd show some examples of the analytics flow and the types of things that we're doing in terms of marketing support. And really, it's what data we're using, the spatial tools, ML, that we're using to solve marketing problems for our clients. So we have some examples of the things that we've run across. As Dan mentioned, we've been stitching together over the last couple of years, and we're working to consolidate in a more enterprise level environment. So we get the next slide here. So one of the verticals we work in is urgent care, and we actually started using OAC through some of our Oracle licensing and cloud data warehouse in the past. And so really, as we're working in this particular industry and COVID hit, and we're obviously we're analyzing patient flow and trends within the different urgent care providers. One of the things we saw with COVID was a remarkable drop in the number of in-person visits. So there, what ended up happening was the telemed or telehealth visits jumped from 1% of their volume to 35% literally overnight. And what that did was it created a unique situation where we had to rescore the urgent care footprints. If you think about urgent care, unlike a hospital system, which pulls from large areas, counties, metropolitan areas, urgent cares are really more retail focused, serving a sort of a finite, what we call market trade area. Once telemed became prevalent, it created the opportunity to go outside of their normal footprint, but also to support rural areas where there wasn't a lot of urgent care coverage. So it gave us the opportunity to rescore, remodel larger chunks of geography that we could keep their volumes and keep the care up, as the pandemic was taking foot. So, in watching the trends, once we saw that dip in the original spike in COVID, we've seen the visits come back up just because of the introduction of telemed and being able to address those particular trade areas. The other is, from a marketing perspective, attribution's a big word. What could I look at in terms of determining what drove a conversion? Was it my different messaging that I had? Was it the different channels that I was using? And so we've been able to actually use OAC and the ML features to look at using some algorithms that said, okay, if someone sees 5 different messages from me as a healthcare provider, how can I determine which method actually drives the conversion? The typical sort of industry standard, which I think is kind of a canned package, is first touch, last touch. What was the last thing I saw? What was the first thing I saw? So it's a very easy heuristic method that is easy to calculate. You put the spin towards the last thing that they saw, and that's where you attribute the conversion. What we found was that because there were so many different views of the different creative and the different messages, that it was giving kind of a false positive. If you felt like the last touch item was your big driver, you would reallocate money. And what ended up happening was you were detracting from other signals or other intent signals that could actually drive conversion. So what happened was what was a very simple mathematical calculation, we put some ML in where it examined over 250,000 possible combinations of what drove the conversion. So you either convert or you don't convert. And so using, I think, Markov chain and some channel attribution, we're able to analyze what really drove. And it wasn't what we thought was in first place with last touch or first touch, actually was in the middle of the pack. And we were able to allocate marketing spend more effectively. But more importantly, it just keeps it relevant to what actually drives that particular conversion. And the same goes, we can pull out the actual intent signals and drop in the actual channels. One of the things that's very interesting about all of our media consumption habits is that we're either in a social media application, we're doing general browsing, maybe we're dropping mail in a mailbox, but it's where we're consuming our content drives what really pushes towards that conversion. So being able to measure the fact that I saw social media, I saw a programmatic ad, or I saw one or the other exclusively, helps with that channel attribution as well. So all this was actually going through OAC and through the ML functions for campaign attribution. A couple of other things that we were using an external spatial feature that we plugged into ADW to do some visualizations of where we were building these predictive models. So what we would do is create these heat maps or actually we call these hex grids. It's a sort of a finite level of geography that we're able to analyze these pods, or it looks almost kind of like a honeycomb, where we drop in the point data of where we were building out these trade areas. So it tells us where most of our potential is. But what we really liked about getting into OAC, unlike we typically use SaaS in an on-prem system where you have to extract data to actually build models or extract samples. Charlie Berger said something very meaningful to us, and that is, you don't take the data to the algorithms, you bring the algorithms to the data. So the fact that we can layer in all the modeling and profiling and actually have challenger models to test where we think we would get the best gain is a big gain for us as a company, because with SaaS, we typically have to pull data out of the data warehouse, go into the SaaS server, build the models, and then go and put it back in and score back into the database. So it just creates more efficiency that way. And also, when you're advertising in something like urgent care, which is a universal need, I mean, everybody might or could have a need for urgent care at one point or the other. Measuring control groups is a big deal. So we're using some of the k-means algorithms also in OAC to help us with trade area definitions for different clinics. Because if we're going to run control groups, random control design, we want to make sure we have similar locations, similar urbanization, similar patient counts, similar demographics. So this has been very effective for doing this. So part of our big ask with Vlamis and their team is to take all these different processes and consolidate them into one environment rather than us stitching from different tools and visualization sources. And then before Dan shows a quick demo or a brief demo, is the dashboard reporting that comes from all these demographics. Because we house so much consumer data, we're constantly profiling and updating snapshots of who the customers are, what do they do, and more importantly, what influences them to buy. So a lot of the visualizations we do are comparing different variables with different market statistics, so we can see if we're over-indexing, we're under-indexing, we're over-penetrated, under-penetrated, and all kinds of different demographic variables. Same goes for financials. If we are selling certain products or services that require certain credit values, certain wealth resources, certain things around household income, all those can be scored and visualized as well. And then also what influences people to buy. It's not just the fact that they have certain demos and financial attributes. We really want to know attitudinally what's driving some of those conversions. So there's a lot of attitudinal data we put in for our clients so that we can visualize is Facebook a preferable channel? Or do they look for discounts when they're buying? Do they not? So there's just lots of attitudinal things that we layer in as well. So Dan, with that, you have I think a slide or two you want to share as well.
Yeah, let's see. One of the things I wanted to show, perhaps this is, we believe very much in showing you where we are in the process. And I wanted to kind of highlight something that we're working on, and I'm leaving up Ray's previous slide. You'll see in another platform, they show the goal that they're trying to obtain, which is in that gray background that you see behind things, and where they are for each of these comparison values. So the concept is this is a market index of where we are for each one of these. For instance, this if I pick on tech early adopter 0 through 20, 21 through 40, and you see this gray shadow behind versus the 10%, the blue bar above, and showing, a comparison between a control group and the profiles that we're looking at for this. And you can see also the colors of the bars show the attainment over that 35% here, down here 10%, 25%, and so forth. And it's something we're actually looking at. How do we then show the index and where we are in each of these control groups for each of these? And I mocked up something I want to show you that we're working on. And frankly, we don't have it all done, just to let you know. But I figured, let me show this to the group. This is what the user community is about, showing things that are even in progress rather than the shiny demo that solves everything. So I want to show, this is an example of something that we're working on right now. Imagine, if you will, this is a build quantity, is how much we build, and this is the yellow. The green is what we build, and the yellow is the target. And you can see for communication across, kind of like what Ray was showing, across these different lines of businesses, how much we have obtained of that goal, or a comparison of a single metric against what the where we are breaking down each of these. We can do that by showing where we are in each, and as you hover over, this is, by the way, OAC, showing each of these, and as you hover over, you can see what the number is. We can also, one of the things we preach at Vlamis is actually, if you want to show how much you've obtained of it, graph the difference. So I have a difference measure that I've created, quantity difference by line of business, and you can see that orange represents the difference between the green and the yellow, and so forth. For each of these, you can see that's the difference. Is it better to perceive the difference, or is it better to actually graph the difference? We also have another standard way of doing that. Anytime you want to look at two measurements and how they compare, the obvious choice, indeed, this is what OAC does by default, it'll actually create a scatter plot where you put one of the measurements on one axis and another measurement on the other axis. And we can look at that in terms of how they compare and look for a ratio between those two. And then the last one that I have in here to show is a bullet graph. And this is one of the visualizations that you can download from the analytics library in here. And then I'm showing that for many of the lines of businesses in here. And the blue bar represents how much the target is. And then you can see filled in here is the green, if you will, to see how much of that we have obtained for each of these various lines of business. So these are all ways of trying to show a measurement and a control. Compare that against in here, trying to show this type of thing. And this is the type of thing we're working on, is what's the best way to visualize these. Indeed, one of the things we may end up with is the ability to create a custom visualization to handle exactly this type of need to show a one comparison against the other. But what we don't have is the ability to change the color of this. Notice this is all blue in here, and I haven't found a way to do that with the built-in control. Fortunately, Oracle supplies the code behind this. This is the type of direction we're heading on the project as we put this all together. So I just want to kind of highlight that and just give you all an early sense of what you can do. That was live OAC, and this is what, Ray at Amsive came and said, hey, this is the type of stuff we're doing. We'll be talking about what's the best way to visualize that. With that, Ray, thank you for presenting on where you are. I think we have time for a few questions. Adel, if there's anything that's come in here that we can handle as part of the presentation.
Yes, we have. Thank you so much. Was a very, very interesting presentation. And we have one question for Michael Tramontana. He said that one of the most powerful capabilities of the legacy app in the marketing module was the ability to perform target segmentation and list generation to build outbound campaigns and programs. This will require write-back or BLT to the marketing module. Is that one of the applications that can consume this in real time? He didn't hear you to say that, but he wants to know.
Go ahead, Ray.
Oh, okay. We haven't used the marketing module in the past because really most of the segmentation and the predictive models we build were coming out of SaaS at the time. So we just started actually with OAC in terms of the challenger models that I was showing earlier. So I don't think we've used this before, because really what happens is when we build these predictive models, we're actually pushing those audiences to Google, we're pushing them to Facebook, we're pushing them to Pandora, we're actually pushing them into their platforms. We're not actually using their data. So it's a little bit of a different media integration. We build the predictive models first, and then we use those platforms for their reach and their algorithms for actual ad targeting. So it's a little bit of a different approach, but I don't think we've used that process in the past.
Well, in the marketing and segmentation, if that's what he's referring to, is something in the OBIE platform, and I believe that really didn't get brought over to the OAC platform. And so if that's what he's referring to, that didn't come over. It was left behind. I guess there weren't enough customers that were using those exact capabilities. So it's actually, when we talk about gap analysis, that's one of the things that was left behind from the move from OBIE to OAC. Any other questions, Adel?
No, we don't have any other questions. But one thing that I was thinking that Michael can do maybe is to share this in the OAC Idea Lab. Yeah. So maybe, Michael, if you want, you can. We're going to talk about the useful links in a few minutes. And you can share, your idea of this is some feature that you think it's interesting to have in the cloud too. And if you have enough votes, this is a feature that probably the product managers are going to look at it.
In the breaks, if we have chance, we'll show the Idea Lab. That is where the Oracle product management looks for kind of what should we include in the product, enhancement requests, basically. And sometimes there's a fuzzy line between bugs and enhancement requests. Depends who you ask. But it's a place for you to kind of make your voice known in terms of the things you're looking for in the product. If there are any other, and let's see, one of the things I wanted to also mention as part of the project is that, as you can see, we're working on this as we develop on this project. So as we put this all together, you'll see some of this probably in future tech casts and such. We'll present where we are on building what really I think is described as a marketing analytics engine on the ADW and OAC platforms, using the features of ADW and ODI to do those transformations in bringing everything together in one combined platform where we ingest the data, scrub it, do some of the quality checks that need to be done, build the machine learning models on top of that, and then finally visualize all that data on the OAC platform. That's what's being built by Amsive, and it'll be a pretty powerful capability that can be used for all sorts of data and all sorts of analytics by Amsive at the conclusion of the project. They've been doing it for a while now, for multiple times, correct, Ray? Anything that you can share in terms of some of the ways that's been used by some of the customers that you can talk about?
Sure. Well, one of the asks we had with ADW was to move data miner in as well, because we like that feature in OCI, but it was something that was sunsetted before it came to ADW. But yeah, so again, because we house a lot of U.S. consumer data, we build predictive models for a variety of industries. So having the ability to actually build models on top of the database and not extracts has been a pretty big deal. And Dan, to your point, if you think about all the different healthcare providers there are, all the financial services products there are, there's a lot of opportunity for not only new acquisition, but cross-sell, CRM activity, just a wealth of different ways to actually do predictive analytics for growing customer growth. And that's why we're trying to stitch this all together and make it obviously more enterprise level, more automated from the way that we've actually had to do this in the past.
Can you, for how long have you been doing this, Ray, in terms of doing this for the customers? And are there any that you can talk about in terms of what they've achieved by looking at, I think you talked about earlier in the presentation, the ability to attribute various behaviors that consumers have. I remember in previous discussions when we've talked about this, the ability to determine who walked into the store and why did they walk into the store. You talked about, you know, the typical way is by looking at the last behavior, but that may not be what sent the person to the store. Any stories from that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you think about that goes back to what the marketing funnel is all about. You know, when you're down funnel, that means you're very close to a conversion. That's usually when you're searching for rates on loans, or you're searching for cell phone plans or new products. What we try to do, and actually we marry this up with Oracle's Marketing Cloud through their data management platform, which was called Blue Kai, where we put the predictive audiences in. We can actually see intent and things that give us a little more visibility into that they're thinking about making a purchase. That creates kind of a blue water effect where there's not a lot of competition. If you think about it, when you start searching for anything, you get hit by all kinds of different ads. The folks are competing against your product to get those eyeballs. So we try to move back up the marketing funnel a bit with a strong predictive audience that actually we can see some intent. And by doing that, you don't have to bother folks very much. You know, the annoying factor is a big deal in advertising these days, just too many ads coming at you. So if we can, we have a high predictive audience, high propensity audience, they're showing intent, you don't have to bother them very much. So we can actually show them the product or service that we're promoting for our client and then move on to the next person who's showing that intent. And that way we keep the cost very low. So what ends up happening is the cost of acquisition, the cost to acquire a new customer drops dramatically when you can actually marry all this up. Predictive analytics, predictive intent, and then again, they don't have to spend as much and be more efficient with the actual marketing outlay.
Okay.
We have another question.
I think Ayla will turn things over to you.
Yes, we have a new question. The question says, could you build these dashboards across applications that are in Oracle Cloud and combine with legacy applications that might be on-prem?
Yeah, we can. So that's one of the things we'll be looking at is the ability to use these as a dashboard where you reach out and use another platform, then use an API call to embed the analytics in a different application. You can do that as well. The basic process is you create the visualizations and then embed those in using an API call. And I believe we actually have a tech cast that has shown that type of capability in the past of embedded things. Oracle has demos on that to show that of embedding an application in another application, embedding a visualization, sorry, in another application.
Yes, Mike Duran has a presentation about it. Yeah.
Right, Mike Duran, D-U-R-R-A-N. You all can Google it or look on our previous tech casts.
Let me
where
yes.
he shows that.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you so much, Ray, for this presentation and for all the insights that you have shared.